Following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFN Geek. It's been a while since I did my previous review, and it's because here where I live in California, we've been having a lot of rain and crazy weather, and so I've been helping my family get our house prepared for all the storms we've been having, and there were highway closures, and even getting to my job was a bit of a hassle, so recording reviews for my YouTube channel was not at the top of my list of priorities this past week, but finally here, I've got some time to get a review done, so I decided to review one of the Transformers figures I was going to pass on entirely, and the reason I ended up getting this figure was because the day I walked into my local Target store and found it, they were having a sale where Voyager class Transformers were only $29.99, and with Hasbro, how often they've been increasing the price on Transformers action figures, $29.99 for a brand new Voyager class figure was a pretty good deal. So let's take a look at Transformers Legacy Armada Starscream. So I am actually a very huge Unicron trilogy fan, and so much so that I actually still have all of my original Unicron trilogy Transformers action figures from the 2000s in my Transformers collection. The Unicron trilogy started my fandom with the Transformers franchise, and on that note, I have purposely not been getting any of the modern Unicron trilogy action figures that have been released in the Legacy line, such as Velocitron Override, Titan Class Cybertron Metroplex, and I am not going to get the upcoming Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Armada Hotshot figure. I'm passing on that figure. The reason why I'm not interested in any of the Unicron trilogy action figures is because since I still have all the originals, even though the new figures in the Legacy line have improved articulation, and unlike the original Unicron trilogy action figures, specifically the Armada figures that this version of Starscream is from, even though they have a lot more articulation and they aren't bricks like the original figures, all of the gimmicks have been removed, including the pack-in Minicon partners, and that was what drew me into collecting the Transformers Armada line back in 2003 when I started collecting Transformers. Is that when you bought a Transformers action figure with the Minicon partner, you actually got 2 Transformers for the price of 1. And so having the new Legacy with the new Legacy figures, only claim to fame is improved articulation, and being allowed to have more action poses in robot mode, and having vehicle modes that aren't as chunky as the original figures from the 2000s were. That's not much of a motivation for me to get the modern day figures. I'm still personally hoping that Hasbro and Takara they'll announce that they're going to re-release the original Armada action figures, maybe in an anniversary line. Who knows? Technically, last year, 2022, was the 20th anniversary of Transformers Armada. The franchise was launched in 2002. It wasn't until January of 2003 that I started collecting the Transformers Armada action figures when I'd seen enough episodes of the Armada cartoon on Cartoon Network and I forgot what other television channel was airing it as well, but even though as much as I love Transformers Armada and the Unicron trilogy, with all the gimmicks removed on the new modern figures, I have no motivation to get any of them. So my main motivation for Armada Starscream was finding him at such a great price, and also because the Transformers Armada version of Starscream, it remains one of my all-time favorite interpretations of Starscream, and since it was the first version of Starscream I ever watched was his portrayal in Transformers Armada, and I assumed that that's what Starscream was like. I didn't realize that until several years after that, Transformers Armada was the most unique portrayal of Starscream to ever be portrayed in the Transformers franchise. For those of you unfamiliar, Armada Starscream is similar to Dinobot from Transformers Beast Wars. He starts off as a villain. He has a change of heart halfway, but unlike Dinobot, who remained a hero fighting with the heroic Maximals to the end of the series, Starscream, after a while he became a true Decepticon once again, and unlike Dinobot, who after becoming a hero stayed a hero in Beast Wars, the Armada version of Starscream, he struggled to find out if he was more comfortable being a hero or being a villain. villain, and by the time he decided he was more comfortable being a hero, he sacrificed himself to try and show Megatron and the Decepticons how evil Unicron was by firing at him, and Unicron ended up blasting Starscream into a million pieces, just like G1 Galvatron did to G1 Starscream in the Transformers G1 movie. So yes, the Armada version of Starscream is the closest we've ever gotten Starscream to being, well, basically like Shattered Glass Starscream, where he's a heroic version of him. And it makes me wonder what it would be like if we got a Shattered Glass version of Armada Starscream, where he starts off as a hero and then he becomes a villain by the end, acting like G1 Starscream. That would be an interesting thing to see. So yes, one thing I will give the designers at Hasbro and Takara, even here looking at the box art of Starscream in his jet mode, and here the artwork of him on the side in his robot mode, they did design this figure as an updated version of the original 2002 Armada Starscream action figure. I don't have the original Armada Starscream action figure, but I do have the Armada Thundercracker figure. Unfortunately, it's on a very high shelf that's out of reach, and I apologize, I won't be bringing that figure out for a size comparison. If we get this figure repainted into Armada Thundercracker, I might get that figure and then do a size comparison of it, but if I were to do a size comparison of this figure with the original figure, then my review would be focused primarily on the lack of gimmicks and how terrible a figure this is compared to the original Armada figure. But I will leave you guys with this note. The original Armada Starscream action figure, even though it was a Voyager class figure just like the Legacy figure here, back in 2002, an average-sized Voyager class Transformers figure in the Armada line, it's basically the same size as an average leader class figure in the Legacy line today. So that's how much Transformers figures have been downsized over the last 21 years, from 2002 to the current year of 2023. So I'll leave you guys on that note as far as comparing this to the original figure. But yeah, you do have some nice artwork here, and there are some improvements over this figure compared to the original that I will say throughout the review. Hopefully I'll remember them. But yeah, I really enjoy how Hasbro and Takara designed this to be a more updated version of the Armada Starscream action figure rather than his animation model. One way you can tell that this is an updated version of the original Armada Starscream action figure and not his animation model from the Armada cartoon is that in the Armada cartoon, Starscream's helmet, for instance, the cartoonist made his helmet charcoal gray instead of actual solid black like it is here on the action figure. So that's how you can tell this is designed to be an update of the original Armada action figure rather than being based on Starscream's animation model from the Armada cartoon. Coming on here to the back of the box, you've got Starscream in his robot mode, and in his jet mode he transforms back and forth between both modes in 18 steps. And oddly enough, one of Starscream's swords, or it's here on the product photos here, it's painted white, but on the final product, the sword is actually cast in a gray plastic, so interesting decision to have it be gray, unless that was how bright the photos taken by Hasbro's camera were. I can't tell, but that's another thing. That's another color palette change. Is that in the Armada cartoon, Starscream's his wings, his arms, all the parts on him that are on his action figure, metallic gray, they were actually white in the Armada cartoon. That was actually quite common for characters who were supposed to be silver to be animated white in the Armada cartoon show. So, I forgot the point I was trying to get, but regardless, I still think that for what it's trying to be, I will give Starscream the benefit of the doubt because Armada Starscream is one of my favorite characters from the entire Transformers Unicron trilogy. He's right up there along with the Cybertron version of Optimus Prime and Armada Sideways and the Cybertron version of Megatron, and being one of my favorite Unicron trilogy characters. characters. So Armada Starscream is most likely going to be the exception, the only Unicron trilogy figure in the Legacy line that I add to my collection. If I find the upcoming Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Armada Hotshot figure at a decent price like I did with Starscream, I might just get it, but so far the Unicron trilogy figures that have been released, with the exception of this figure, they've all been easy passes for me, and that's why I have no interest in getting any of the figures I mentioned previously. So without further delay, I've babbled on long enough about the backstory with Armada Starscream, who he is, and my own prejudices or biases is the word I was looking for, or with this figure compared to the original. So let's get this figure out of the box and take a close look at Armada Starscream in his robot mode. Alright, so here is Legacy Armada Starscream out of his box, transferred into his robot mode, and he is very impressive looking, I will admit, for, again, trying to be an updated version of the original Armada Starscream action figure. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that I do have him mistransformed, and that's because, as it's actually seen here in the back, because I wanted to show you guys that this is how the original Transformers Armada Starscream action figure looked in robot mode. This entire section right here, the back end of the fuselage and his two thruster cannons, I can't remember what they're actually called, but on the original Armada Starscream figure, this part was permanently stuck, sticking out of the back of him, and so it basically made Armada Starscream look like an upside down letter L. And so it's very hard to get him on a shelving space, because you can't, on the original figure, you can't fold this part downward. It's stuck permanently in the back, and that had to do with the main gimmick of the Transformers Armada line of Starscream being partnered up with a Minicon partner. And on the original Armada Starscream figure, there was a set of electronic sounds on here. I don't think the original figure didn't actually light up, but there were lots of sounds, and this is also part of the reason why, when we get Starscream transformed into his jet mode, he doesn't have a tail fin. On the original action figure, you would place Starscream's Minicon partner on here, and there was a button that would cause his shoulder cannons to automatically, on a spring, they would be released, and they would automatically flip forward 180 degrees, and there was a pair of missiles that would point out on what missiles that you would fire on here, and they almost kind of sort of incorporated see these little arrows sculpted in right there? I don't know how you can see that, but then right here, this rectangular sculpted piece right here that I'm pointing at with my finger, that was the button where you would launch the spring-loaded missiles out. And on the original Armada Starscream figure, the missiles were done in red plastic. On the Armada Thundercracker figure that I have, the missiles are done in silver, which matches up more with his jet mode. So that's the main reason why in his jet mode Starscream doesn't have tail fin or vertical stabilizer. His idea was to incorporate the Minicon gimmick of having his shoulder cannons automatically fold out. They even mentioned this in the Armada cartoon, that until he found a Minicon to partner with him, Starscream couldn't even activate his shoulder cannons. He needed a Minicon to do it. He couldn't activate them by himself. So that was a nice way of showing how mandatory the Minicon gimmick was on the original Armada action figures. So here on the new Legacy figure, you can actually take the rear section of the fuselage, and there's two clips where you can fold it down and clip it into place. Right out of the box, they're a little hard to tab in, but if you want to leave the shoulder cannons pointing back here you can do that. Unfortunately, it doesn't stay tabbed in when you fold the entire shoulder cannon piece down, because it folds down past those two tabs that hold it in place. But thanks to the power of modern-day engineering, you can, if you want, to give Starscream more of a backpack and not give him the upside-down L shape of his original action figure. You can fold the shoulder cannons down. Now, because the original Armada Starscream action figure could not fold the shoulder cannons down into a backpack, throughout the Armada cartoon show, Starscream is always animated with his shoulder cannons in this permanent position. So I love how. So at least I will give props to Hasbro and Takara for that. That you do have display options with Legacy Armada Starscream in his robot mode. Oh, so that's pretty nice. Nice to see that. And I did say that there are a couple of features on this new figure that the original figure was lacking in. This backpack transformation was one of them. Another one that I do personally believe is an improvement over the original Armada Starscream figure is that this right here, Starscream's gray sword, which was his weapon of choice throughout the Armada cartoon. On the original Armada action figure, the sword was actually taken from the left side wing of Starscream's jet mode. It would unfold outward in a zigzag shape and become a sword that Starscream would wield. In the Armada cartoon, it would end up glowing red whenever Starscream took it off his wing, and this is what it looked like right before it started glowing. So I was kind of wondering why they chose to make it gray instead of red, since that's how it appeared in the Armada cartoon. But I do admit that having the sword be its own sword instead of forming from one of Starscream's wings, I actually like that more than the sword being one of the wings, because I played with the sword on my original Armada Thundercracker figure, and after several times of play and transforming the wing into the sword, transforming the sword back into the jet mode wing, and it made the wing floppy and wanting to constantly fall off on my original Armada Thundercracker figure. So I do enjoy the sword being its own, so being an actual sword accessory piece and not forming one of Starscream's wings. So that's one thing the Legacy figure I personally believe has the original Armada figure beat. It is having a pair of dedicated wings and having Starscream's sword be an extra accessory piece. Now for the other sword that Legacy Armada Starscream comes with, this is actually the Star Saber sword featured in the Armada cartoon, and the Star Saber sword ended up being one of three teams of Minicons who formed weapons. There was the Star Saber sword made from the Air Defense Minicon team, the Skyboom shield formed from the Racing Minicon team, and then the Requiem Blaster, which was formed from the Space Minicon team, which you actually have right up there inside their packaging. I got the Space Minicons last year off of eBay. I've been lazy in getting them opened up, but yes, with the Requiem Blaster now in my collection, I now have all of the, I have some variations of all the Armada Minicon on weapons teams, and this, in my opinion, is a bad sign for fans of the Unicron trilogy Minicons, such as myself. Now, because we got the Star Saber sword as an actual sword here with Legacy Armada Starscream, I take this as a sign from Hasbro and Takara that they currently have no plans whatsoever on releasing modern-day figures of the Minicons from the Unicron trilogy, but at least they sculpted it to look like the three Minicons that combine to form it. You have Sonar, who forms the hilt of the sword. You've got, I believe it's Runway, who forms the bottom half of the blade of the Star Saber sword, and then you've got Jetstorm, who forms the top of the blade. I think I got Jetstorm and Runway mixed up with each other. But yes, it is sculpted to look like the original Minicons that formed it. So, in my opinion, that's one of the letdowns of this new figure, is that the Star Saber sword being an actual sword included with Armada Starscream, it's a sign that we aren't going to get any Minicons in the near future. So it appears that Hasbro and Takara for now are done with gimmicks on the high-end collector-based Transformers action figures, and they're just focusing on designing robot modes that have lots of articulation to them rather than gimmicks. And speaking of articulation, let's get to Starscream's articulation now. Now, on the original Armada figure, because the joints had to be designed around the Minicon gimmick, a lot of the joints on the original Armada Starscream figure were swivel joints or hinge joints that didn't have too much articulation. But but there is one joint that the original Armada Starscream figure has that this one does not, and it's how you hinge the arm outward at the shoulder joint. Here on the Legacy figure, you have to swivel out the entire arm at the shoulder itself. On the original Armada Starscream figure, the swivel joint is actually here on the inside of the shoulder, and so the arm can actually fold outward without the top of the shoulder itself, having to hinge outward, and so I kind of wish they would have designed that differently, but looking at it from the back, I realized they couldn't because of how the arm transforms into jet mode. Oh, but that would have been a nice feature to see there. So for articulation, his Starscream's head is on a ball joint, so if you can get his shoulder cannons out of the way, he can spin his head left and right 360 degrees. He can loop up quite a bit. So if you wanted to, you could mimic his final scene when he fires Unicron on if you desire. The arms go outward at the shoulder, but unfortunately you have to rotate the entire shoulder joint to achieve that. Swivel joints in the bicep, hinged elbows. The hands can kind of go down a bit at the wrist, but that's mainly due to a transformation joint. He does have a waist swivel, but it's hindered by the nose cone of the jet at pegging into it to form the front section of his torso. So the swivel jointed waist is just rendered useless. And to get full movement on the legs, you do have to move the shoulder cannons upward. So getting the arms out of the way, the legs can go outward. They can do a full splits. At this point, I do have to give a shout out to another Transformers collector, Perspective End. Please subscribe to his channel if you have not. He does fantastic reviews of Transformers action figures, and Perspective End pointed out in his review that, as you can see right here, this is a universal problem with every copy of Starscream. The double mushroom-shaped pegs that make the swivel joints for the thighs, the legs do not want to stay attached to these mushroom-shaped swivel joints, and all of the swivel joints on Armada Starscream use that double mushroom swivel shape to work, and so every copy of Starscream has this problem. I popped the legs off and then popped them back on the mushroom peg just to see if they would stay in place. The left side leg is hanging on a little better than the right side leg is, but yes, it's a universal problem with every copy of Legacy Armada Starscream where the legs want to pop off at the thigh joints. So unfortunately, some of the improved articulation on the new figure, it's rendered useless due to bad QC issues. So even though there's potential for this to have a lot of articulation to it, the new Legacy Armada Starscream figure, its articulation unfortunately rivals that of the original figure despite a 21-year difference between release of the two figures. So you got hinge joints at the knees, you got swivel joints at the ankles. The feet can also go up and down slightly, but that's primarily due to transformation. So if you wanted to, you can get Armada Starscream into a sprawl-legged pose. And that's the point I've already mentioned this time and again, so I apologize for repeating myself, but the main selling point of this new version of Armada Starscream, the Legacy figure, is that it boasts having improved articulation over the original action figure, but because of bad QC issues on some of the joints, the main selling point of this action figure is rendered useless, and so I'm jumping ahead a bit here, but this action figure isn't for everyone. It's only for those who are absolute diehard fans of Starscream and love his portrayal in Transformers Armada. Before we transform him into his jet mode for a size comparison in robot mode, here is Armada Starscream next to Earthrise or Generation 1 Starscream. So you can see that these are definitely two different versions of Starscream, but because of the similarities in the head sculpts, the fact that they both transform into jets, you can tell this is, just like Generation 1 Starscream, this figure here is Starscream, just from a different universe. And, yeah, I do love how the heads are, even though they're different, you can identify them as uniquely being Starscream. And, speaking of Armada Starscream's head sculpt, here's a close-up of it. It would be a great action fit. It would be a fantastic head sculpt, but unfortunately, there's paint. The paint was lazily applied at the factory for the white head crest there on top of his head, and even more so, Down there by his chin, there's some black paint, a splotch there by his lower lip, and so it actually looks like Starscream has a goatee on the bottom of his face. So I kind of wish that white paint would have been applied to his black helmet more thoroughly at the early during the manufacturing process. But that's just a minor nitpick for people who are OCD about the paint quality on the faces of Transformers action figures. But yes, I do love that the original flip-over-shoulder cannon gimmick that it is still found here. Granted, it here, but again, this is why I didn't bring out my original Armada Thundercracker figure for a size comparison, because compared to the original figure with the automatic spring-loaded launching mechanism, the electronic sounds, and having the spring-loaded firing missiles actually come out of it, this one is just a shell of what that original gimmick was. So without further delay, let's get Starscream transformed into his jet mode and wrap up the review. Alright, and so here is Legacy Armada Starscream transformed into his jet mode. And yes, it is a very faithful update to the original Armada Starscream action figure. And for those of you wondering why Starscream's head is shaped like this, sorry for that brief interruption. I was having to take a phone call. I was hoping that wouldn't happen in the middle of the review, but bringing focus back here to Armada Starscream, as I said, I was about to say, the reason why his head is sticking out like this is because this is exactly how the original Armada Starscream figure transformed. It basically had a spring-loaded action gimmick where the head would, sorry for having too low, pop up straight out when you insert Starscream's Minicon partner into him. You can kind of sort of mimic that by that Minicon, the spring-loaded head transformation here on the new Legacy figure, but instead of Starscream's head popping out, he just looks upward like that, so it kind of halfway mimics that old automatic gimmick, and having Starscream's head pop out started the transformation for him, and that was true with at least half of the Transformers Armada action figures, similar to the Generation 1 Power Masters. Here's where you would have to insert the Power Master partners into the engine blocks for the larger figures to start transformation into robot mode. You had to insert the Minicons to start the transformation process for some of the Armada action figures. So, they removed all the gimmicks but kept all the transformation sequence in it. So just like a lot of the Generation 1 action figures we've been getting in the Legacy and the War for Cybertron trilogy lines, this is very faithful to the transformation process on the original Armada Starscream action figure. The arms did hang out here on the original Armada figure, just folded up under the wings and acting like a pair of additional engine thrusters. You got the rear wings here which form Starscream's knee spikes. The cockpit was painted the same metallic blue, and just like on the original Armada action figure, the cockpit was out of solid plastic. That's because of another Minicon gimmick where the cockpit on the original Armada Starscream figure was actually a button. And what you would do is, using the Star Saber sword as an example, on the original Armada Starscream action figure, his Minicon partner actually attached here under the nose of the jet, and it became the landing gear for the front landing gear for the jet mode. And so what you would do is, to detach the Minicon you would push down on the cockpit of Starscream, and it would release the Minicon on from there. So that's a nice callback to that. Let's see, I'm trying to think, will it? No. So I was kind of wondering if maybe the Star Saber sword might fit in facing this way, but it's too lengthy. So unfortunately, the only spots for storage of the Star Saber sword and Starscream's other sword, you have two options. You can either have them attach them to the sides of his robot mode arms like this, or if you want to go by the photos on his box and his instruction sheet, you can attach them to the underside of his wings, and similar to Generation 1 Starscream's null rays, the swords become a pair of missiles for the jet mode. So that is unfortunately the best weapon storage for the swords, so it's not the greatest, but considering how much the designers were concentrating on giving this figure modern-day articulation while staying true to how the original figure transformed. Or they had to trying to find the right balance of mixing new and old techniques together to make a modern-day Armada Starscream figure. Now, one last feature that the new Legacy figure has the original Armada Starscream figure beat is the fact that the nose cone of the jet mode it's parallel and completely horizontal with the fuselage. On the original Armada Starscream action figure, because of how the robot mode chest was sculpted, along with incorporating the Minicon gimmick, that even though in the Armada cartoon Starscream was portrayed with the nose cone like this, completely parallel horizontally to the ground, on the original Armada Starscream action figure, the hinge joint is making it a little difficult to show, but okay, it's holding for now right there. On the original Armada Starscream action figure, the nose cone of the jet angles downward like this. And so unfortunately on the original Armada Starscream figure, it's... My apologies for another interruption there. But yes, on the original Armada Starscream figure, and my Armada Thundercracker to this day, no matter how hard I've tried, this is how far up the nose cone on the original Armada Starscream figure angles upward. So that is one area where the new Legacy figure has the original beat, is having the nose cone actually sit in the correct orientation. So I really am thrilled that the designers were able to fix that that one part of the original Armada Starscream action figure that I felt was flawed, was having the nose cone sit parallel with the fuselage. And just like the original Armada Starscream figure, the flip-out cannon weapon still works. Again, it is lackluster compared to the original figure with the Minicon gimmick spring-loaded Minicon gimmick removed, but for what it's trying to do, it does achieve what Starscream does in the Armada cartoon show. One thing I kind of wish that the designers would have done was give the option of having a vertical stabilizer on the back with the Minicon gimmick removed, because not having a vertical stabilizer, not having a tail fin in the jet mode, and this was even true back in 2002 when I first watched the Armada cartoon show. I always felt that Starscream looked more like a Cybertronian jet than an actual Earth-based jet, even though in the Armada cartoon it shows him taking on the jet on planet Earth. So in the Armada cartoon show, this is supposed to be an Earth mode jet that Starscream scans for his vehicle mode after the Decepticons arrive on Earth. And I have never seen a jet that looks like this, so I'll let you guys decide what you think of that idea. And for one last size comparison in jet mode, here is Legacy Armada Starscream next to Earthrise Starscream. And unfortunately, comparing Legacy Armada Starscream with Earthrise Starscream, this is yet another example of how even within the last 2.5 years from when the Earthrise figures were released in 2020 to the Legacy figures in 2022, even though these are both Voyager class Transformers, Armada Starscream is only 2/3 the size of Earthrise Generation 1 Starscream. And no, I am not holding Armada Starscream farther back. I have them, you can hear by that tapping sound, they are standing right next to each other, and so this figure is almost a size class smaller than this figure, so that is very disappointing to see. That even more so when compared in robot mode. In jet mode, Earthrise Starscream becomes a much bigger jet than Legacy Armada Starscream, so that is a tad disappointment. The original Armada Starscream figure, it's even larger than Earthrise Starscream here, so unfortunately comparing these older and newer Transformers action figures together, it's just a visual example of how Hasbro has most definitely been gradually downsizing the overall size of Transformers action figures in recent years. But despite its flaw, since I got Armada Starscream for a great price at my local Target store, I do not regret getting the figure and adding him to my Transformers collection. It's currently rumored that in the coming months later this year in 2023, and for Legacy Evolution, that supposedly we're going to get brand new leader class action figures of Armada Megatron and Armada Optimus Prime, but some are speculating that Armada Optimus Prime might just end up being the Commander class figure for Legacy Evolution. I honestly cannot say, because as all the Transformers action figures, even though there's been listings from online databases that have been leaked showing most of the upcoming Transformers products being released in Legacy Evolution. There have been no actual visual images of the actual action figures themselves, else beyond Legacy Evolution Wave 1, which is slowly trickling out into markets in other countries. Legacy Evolution is available, I believe, for purchase in Canada, the Philippines, maybe Malaysia and Hong Kong. But Legacy Evolution has not yet appeared here in the United States, although Amazon.com has a few of the Legacy Evolution Wave 1 figures in stock right now. But yes, this has been my review of Transformers Legacy Year 1 Armada Starscream. So for the proverbial question, I touched on it in the review, do I recommend getting this figure? Not really. I only recommend you get this figure if you're an absolute Starscream fanatic, and if you're a fanatic of the Armada version of Starscream like I am. If you're not too much of a fan of Armada Starscream, then this figure is a definite pass. I was going to pass on this figure entirely originally since I had no interest in getting any of the Unicron trilogy figures, but again, Armada Starscream is one of my all-time favorite versions of Starscream. So after finding him for just $29.99 at my local Target store, I decided it would be too much of a golden opportunity to pass. So those are the main reasons why I got this figure. But if you're not a fan of the Armada version of Starscream, if you haven't watched the Armada cartoon show and you haven't been exposed to Armada Starscream's journey from villain to hero, then this figure, then aesthetically, as far as the figure itself goes, without any prior information on Starscream's appearance, Starscream's portrayal in the Armada series, for the figure itself, it is an easy pass. It's not the best jet Transformer, and it's arguably one of my least favorite Transformers figures of the Legacy line. So I only recommend getting it if you are a Starscream fan and if you're a Transformers Armada fan. But if you're neither of those, then no, this figure is a pass. Save your money for other Transformers action figures. So thank you guys all so much for watching. This has been the TFangy. This is my review of Transformers Legacy Year 1 Armada Starscream. Thank you guys all for your continued support. And until next time, you guys, stay safe, stay healthy, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.